Welcome, everyone, to episode 66 of the RDH Sports Podcast. I am your host, Chad. Joined alongside me is the long brother, Tanner. How's it going, dude?
It's good. It is very good. I kind of say the same thing in this segment every time. Sports are abundant right now, but I think the repetitiveness speaks on its own, especially here at the end of October where we have probably maybe one or two more games left of baseball, and then we'll have one left sport to watch. But, you know, we'll see what goes on after that. We got a lot more coming, but it's good in sports right now. I'm happy. This is probably my favorite time of the year, with the holidays coming up, starting to get cold out again, and, football's in full swing.
Yeah, it's doesn't really get cold here in Florida, so
Well,
all right, yeah, cold. I'll get there, and then California didn't really get under like 60, 70. So anyway,
it's
this is one of
colder.
colder. There you go. In Texas, it gets cold as heck, and I do miss those cold times. Maybe I did work in an ice rink forever, and I did get pretty used to the cold playing hockey like my entire life. But we won't get onto that rant. You know what I mean? But like Tanner said, we're talking sports this week. Yesterday, they had literally like every sport you could possibly want to watch. Or that was earlier this week. Yeah. When they had on Monday, when they had football, hockey, they had the World Series as well. They had basketball too. I had YouTube TV going up. I had the multi-view. I had 3 games going on at one time. I was like, this is absolutely absurd. Watch it on the iPad too. Definitely a 2-screen kind of guy. Not Tanner's like 5 or 6 screen kind of guy, guys. This guy's elite in that status. Absolute legend.
So
Puts us all to absolute shame. Cords everywhere, rooms in shambles, but every screen, no matter what. That's why if you're a better, listen. You know what I mean? The matchup predictions, Tanner knows his shit. I'm just along for the ride. Anyway, today, if you're not on YouTube and you're on Spotify or Apple Podcast, shout out to you. Thanks for that. And we're talking Dallas Cowboys. That's what we're going to start it off with. We're going to go into some NFL news like always. We're going to hit our matchups. And then after that, we're going to talk a little college football because, Tanner and I's alma mater is first in the SEC. We're going to get into that. We got the World Series and we got a little UFC 308 recap. But we're going to start it off with a little bit of Dallas Cowboy talk. Tanner, the first thing I want to ask you about the Cowboys is, it's already Wednesday. We don't need to necessarily recap the 49ers game, but the one thing that I can say is it was the same Dallas Cowboys. Dallas kind of has one team or the other team, and it tends to start off with the bad Dallas, and then the good Dallas kind of finishes out the game and has a chance to win it at the end there. You can't really ask for more, especially with the score going into the fourth quarter. Most people thought it was over, and it kind of was. And then 49ers let the Cowboys claw back into it and even gave them the ball with a chance to win at the end of the game. And that couldn't do it. So take me through your thoughts because, as Cowboy fans, we've been there forever. But, I mean, what do you do? This is the number one paid player in the league, and he cannot win a game-winning drive against a team that has had his number since we said last time, 2017.
yeah, and it's pretty much exactly like you said. It's the same song and dance we've been seeing, not only with Dak's career and not only with the Niners, but just in recent games with the Cowboys too. Those games kind of come at home, but it's more of like they struggle for a lot of the game, and then halfway through the fourth quarter when the game seems pretty much out of reach, they start hitting. And you can attribute a lot of that to garbage time and the different coverages that teams do go out in with just not nearly as aggressive defensive play calling, just garbage time yards and things of that nature. But it almost seems like you look back to that Ravens game with Dallas not too long ago, a couple weeks back, and it's a similar story. They get down there and they can't do it right at the end because the lead is too big. But this is a slightly different story where Dallas has a chance to win this game. They have a chance to go down. They scored 2 touchdowns, 2 CD, absolute just great drives, in my opinion too. And I think the second of those 2 drives was a legitimate drive that they did. You can put that up and be like, okay, the Niners are playing actual defense and everything like that. So we've seen the Niners blow these leads, week in and week out against these teams that they probably shouldn't have blown them against. And this was another one of a situation where they looked like they were vulnerable, and all Dallas had to do was on that final drive go down, and get a touchdown, and that's just not what Dak could do. It looked like a completely different team from the previous two drives, and honestly, probably that was the worst drive of the entire game, so it's one of those situations where, um, the best players in the league are going to show up in the brightest and the best in the biggest moments, right? And that really didn't happen on that night, over there in San Fran. So it's unfortunate. Dallas got very close. I think out of the games they've played against the Niners in recent memory in the playoffs and in the regular season, this was probably the one that I would say you could be like, okay, even though they did get blown out initially, they kind of clawed back and they had a chance to win it. This was really the one that I think that they probably could have won. I think out of all of these matchups, San Fran looked weak going into the game with the injuries and things of that nature, but they definitely looked beatable. And I think Dallas could have won that game. And it's like you said, I think it falls on the shoulders of Dak Prescott. That you got to go down, you got to complete the game. I get it. You had two great drives at the end, but like, that doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you still lost, and those are garbage points at this point too. So I think that he had some costly interceptions as well, some balls where you're just like, what's going on? Why are we throwing in double coverage? Kind of situations like that. I thought the offense was, for the most part, overall not great. Early on, I thought they had a little bit of success when they took that early lead, but since that point, it was pretty much nothing. So I mean, give some credit to the Cowboys defense later in the game for stopping the Niners, but again, it's a different play calling. It's a different type of play calling, right? So they're just kind of running downhill. They're trying to waste the clock, and Dallas got some stops, but I liked what I saw from Overshone. I thought that he played a great game, and he's probably the linebacker of the future for the Cowboys. Some young talent to invest into. I think that's a bright spot you can pull out of this. I thought the safeties played all right, but overall, there just wasn't a whole ton on the defensive line. There wasn't really a whole ton in coverage. I thought Diggs played meh. I thought the secondary as a whole was pretty okay. So you saw Diggs visually angry at a reporter after the game, which is not a good sign moving forward. So team morale is kind of at an all-time low, I think, right now over there in Dallas, because they have a lot of high expectations, and they're not meeting them even a little bit. So I don't know. It was a game that you kind of could totally. This is what is expected coming in. The Niners were definitely the favorites in that game, but I think a little bit more execution on Dallas' side, and we're talking a different story on this podcast today. I think that it's a completely different story. So I don't know. It was a close game, but in the end, obviously Dallas couldn't get the job done when it mattered most, which is I think the biggest talking point for a $60 million quarterback, like you said.
And it's one of those things too where you kind of nailed it. With the defensive line, it's always going to be challenging when you're up to your sixth string defensive lineman. But the fact that if you were to tell anybody that's a Cowboys fan that you have the ball with around 3 minutes left and Dak Prescott has it and you can go and win on a drive, it's like I'd take that against the Niners every day of the week. Every day of the week, I would take that because. Yeah, Dallas's recent memory games, like some of them have been close, but others have not. You know what I mean? And in this season, if Dallas has those close games, if they have those one possession games, they lose them. And when you look at teams at the end of the year, when you look at playoff teams, when you look at good teams, even they win those games. Another team in the NFC that hasn't won those games is the Bengals. The Bengals are kind of in the exact same boat as the Cowboys. I think Dallas maybe has one more win than the Bengals, but also Dallas only has one more win than the New York Giants. And, right now everyone's saying that the Giants are going to be, them and the Panthers are battling for the first pick. It's like Dallas has one win, one more win. And they have do what?
A lot of teams have only 2 wins. The Browns.
That's what I'm saying. And there's a ton of teams that we're going to get into that were a shocker, not only this weekend, but through the season so far. You kind of nailed one right there. But with the Cowboys specifically, that's how we always start off the podcast and we go into the NFL news stuff. But when you have a $60 million quarterback, when you have the number one quarterback in the league in terms of payment, and he can't do it on a game-winning drive, that's challenging, right? That's challenging. Now, you don't have a threat of a run. Dallas is the worst team in the NFL in run, if not the second worst team in the NFL in running. Hey, bunch of couch warriors here, but Called that. Something else. Injuries happened. Oh no. What happens when you don't have enough players? You have to go sign people off the street or off the practice squad. That's not a bad thing, but at the same time, that's not going to be good. And called that. That's 2 for us. When you pay Dak and CeeDee the way that Dallas did and the fact that they waited to do it, that's why they hurt themselves, right? We talk about that almost every week. So we're not going to continue to hit that one at length. But if you have the ball at the end of the game and you're a quarterback, like, you got to get it done, especially if you're a supposed to be top 5, supposed to be number 1 in the terms of payment. And I'm not harping on Dak specifically saying he should have taken less. I'm not saying that. I actually am someone that believes, I get it. Brady did it. I get that Sidney Crosby in the NHL took $8.7 million. He should have taken the full whatever he could have taken in the NHL. Draisaitl's getting paid almost double. Not really almost double, because that'd be 16. That cap's not there yet. Draisaitl's like 13. But anyway, if you're a player and you're gonna cash out, why the heck not? You know what I mean? If you have the stats to do it and you actually have that conversation, you're able to do it, go ahead. But at the same time, me as a Cowboy fan, unfortunately, now I have to be more critical. Because when Dak was a rookie and he wasn't getting paid any money, and he still went to more, like, that first year, then he got smoked in the playoffs. But unfortunately, nothing is really changing. Because that one season when Dallas went 14-3, and they've won 12 games so many times in Dak's career, but unfortunately, it's just not changing. And what I say is not changing is one-possession games, and also games that noticeable, that when there are adjustments or a coach on the other side that is a little bit more, than Mike McCarthy, what it seems, at the end of the game, it's not close if it's a close game. So, example, when the Green Bay Packers just came in and destroyed Dallas last year in the playoffs. You could also look at the New Orleans Saints this year. You could also look at, all of the losses that Dallas has this year. Specifically with the last loss with the 49ers, this was kind of good in Cowboy fans' eyes. Because up to that point, it's 3 minutes left. Dak's got the ball. We shouldn't be in this game. We've played horrible. Okay, we're showing that we're taking on a top team in the NFC. But they don't win the game. And unfortunately, in this division, Philadelphia has set themselves aside as the number 2 spot. That's pretty obvious. They're going to start chasing Washington. Like we said a week ago, that team's too good to be held down for this long, and they're starting to go. But wrap it up with the Cowboys talk here. Just a question for you, Tanner. This is a Dallas team that, if they continue to play this way, picks in the top 10 of the NFL draft next season. True or false? What do you think?
Top 10?
Top 10.
I mean,
top 10's not 8 and 9. You know what I mean? Top 10's like,
no, that's a negative. That's a losing record by probably a couple games.
Like 6 wins, maybe 7 wins.
At least a couple
8
games.
wins.
No, I don't think 8 would get you top 10.
Not 8.
I think maybe 7, but probably more like 6. Obviously depending on what happens with other teams, but I mean, you don't know what's going to happen. I think the Browns got a lot better. I think the Colts got a lot better. So those teams are probably not going to fall as much as you would think that they would originally. But there's a lot of, like you said, and anyways, I think there's a decent chance. I think there is, especially considering the gauntlet that they have coming up. But usually they do play well within the division. So they haven't played Philly yet. And it's an opponent Dak knows and does like to play well against. And the Cowboys always like to rattle off wins in games that they're, towards the end of the season that can get them up into a bad draft position. So it's just like the way of things. Every season under Jason Garrett they went 8-8. Obviously different with McCarthy. This is kind of the first bad season that he's had that wasn't with a Dak injury attached to it, right? And even then they still went like 4-12. I think that was before the 17-game season, or maybe it was after. But they only had a couple wins, But no, I think there's a chance, but I think they're going to be sneaking right outside of it. I think we're going to be looking at 11 or 10 because I think Dak's just too good to have a record that low. Like 6-11, I think could get you there. I think that would make sense. 7 and 10, maybe. Maybe you're getting pretty close, if not at the like 10 or 9. But I just don't know if I can see Dallas. I mean, it's tough. I don't know. I really don't know. It's kind of a hard question to answer. But I think they're going to pick right outside of it. I'd have to look at the schedule and actually go through it like we did. But I think we went and we said maybe 8 or 9. 8-9 is what they said. And so far, I think on our predictions, we're looking pretty accurate, with the win against the Steelers and the loss against the Niners. So the Falcons are going to be a good test. If they win that game, I think it'll set some expectations going forward. But they needed to win that game, I think, absolutely, on Sunday night. But I think right outside the top 10.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think between that like 11 to 15 range, kind of like you said, and 11 to 15 range in the draft, that's really good. You know what I mean? If you're
Right.
picking top 15,
it's not bad.
no. If you're picking top 15, that's solid. But guess what? Top 10's a lot better.
Yeah.
Top 10's like if you're picking top 10 or you're picking like 13, 14, that's a little bit tough. But if you're top 10, that's top 10 prospects on the board are going to be sitting there. You know what I mean? And inevitably, someone's going to get picked where you're like, who? Like really, they went this early. So especially if you have a couple quarterbacks, which there is some quarterbacks that are coming out next year, most likely with Quinn and Shadir Sanders that are probably going to be up there. Mm-hmm. Moving on from the Dallas Cowboy news, we are going to NFL news now. And first thing we're going to start with is, we're not going to hit it at length, like I said, because it's the podcast is dropping on Wednesday. But the battle of the rookie quarterbacks, if you haven't seen it, you're probably under a rock. Caleb, game-winning drive. There's nothing more you could have asked Caleb Williams to do. Set his team up not only for a win, but had it in the bag. And then, unfortunately, Mr. Viral himself, if you've had to have heard about it, Washington got a Hail Mary touchdown, and it was a pretty bad look for Chicago. Pretty bad look there, especially because the safety that was supposed to cover him not only tipped the ball right to Noah Brown. Shout out for Dallas letting him walk. And, he was kind of dancing on the sideline. Anyway, I bet you he's never going to make that problem again. I bet you Chicago is never going to have a touchdown on them again in Hail Mary. But that was a game where Caleb won. He won that game, and then at the very end, Jaden went in there and took it away from him. But these two guys, you can see why they got drafted 1 and 2. You can see it. You can literally see it. They had an incredible game, and Jaden's playing hurt. And he did all of that. Now his injury designation is off of him, which I still don't understand how they do that. Like, he hurt his ribs a week ago, and now it's just gone. You know what I mean? It's just it's a testament to how these guys are physically and mentally, and all of the preparation and everything they do. We'll talk about someone that didn't do a ton of prep. But what did you think about just the battle of the rookie quarterbacks? Like, these are guys that are gonna be up there for a while, huh? They're pretty good.
Yeah, I think Jaden Daniels is going to be a franchise quarterback of the future. He's going to be obviously the guy for Washington moving forward, and he's got an arm, which is pretty obvious. An absolute destructive thing of nature that he has just attached to his body. But I just thought it was just a really, really awful play just from the Chicago Bears on that last play in general, just on the last drive as a whole. Just allowing them to get to that position where he can make that throw, and obviously like you said with the safety, like why are we taunting? Why are we taunting at the end of the game? The game's not over. Everyone's heard the saying. I don't know what was specific about this week in like this celebrating too early kind of thing. You've seen it happen in the NFL countless times. People, drop the ball before they get into the end zone, and then it's it fumbles out. It fumbles out the end zone, and then it's a touchback for the other team. I don't know how many times we got to go through this song and dance before people realize that there's a full 60 minutes in these games, and anything can happen on any given play. I think Aaron Rodgers has made a career out of Hail Marys. And Jaden Daniels has his first one in his first season. So he's electric. He's an absolute highlight machine, pretty much. Anytime you turn on the TV and he's playing, he's going to be making a play. So, kudos to the Washington Commanders. I think, in my opinion, they probably didn't deserve to win the game, but
no.
They snuck out a win, and that's how good teams do it. They sneak wins out, and they steal wins from games they shouldn't win. And if Cowboys did that on Sunday night, you can consider them, in that category. Maybe not a good team, you know what I mean? But they're sneaking wins out, So, like, with Washington doing that, I think they're like 5-2 now or something like that. But they have a clear lead. Philly's right behind them, but that's going to be a win that they look back on the season and are like, that was a pivotal moment, moving forward. That's going to give you so much confidence. And everything just around it. In a game that Jaden didn't have his best game either, too. They went out and won. But Well, on Chicago's side, I didn't think Caleb had the best game. I thought he struggled a lot in a lot of different places. And the fact that they were even in that game at the very end was amazing. You got to credit Chicago's defense. I think, in my opinion, the rookie race is over. I don't think unless Jaden were, to unfortunately have an injury towards the end of the season, he still might even win it. You know what I mean? So I think Caleb would have to absolutely surpass expectations moving forward for him to even be considered for the award. But I think he still did play well on those last drive or two. I think that they got down there and something happened. I'm not sure. There was a turnover, and they should have had the lead in the game much earlier. But I think it was like a turnover or something like that, or on the goal line, and then Washington went out and had it. But Chicago got another chance. They went right back down and got on the goal line, and they actually punched it in that time. So I mean, kudos. The Bears should have won that game, but I still think there's a lot of things left to do for Caleb Williams in order for him to be the quarterback for this franchise moving forward. But overall, I thought he played well in the big moment, which is kind of what you're looking for. But yeah, that was a heck of a throw, and it's it's crazy. It's just not right, you know.
He's just so good, and it's one of those things where, as we were talking about in the offseason, it's like, how do you evaluate this kid's tape versus his other 4 years as opposed to his last year where he won the Heisman? How do you evaluate those other, or sorry, 3 years of tape? Like, how do you evaluate all of that tape? And hey, you can see flashes of Jaden Daniels, but that last year you saw Jaden 24/7, and something just happened. It could have been the addition of all of the wide receivers that he had at LSU, but then he goes to the NFL and does the same thing. And don't get me wrong, Scary Terry's nasty. I'm not taking anything away from Scary Terry, especially around Halloween. But other guys on that squad, I mean, he's making stuff happen and he's rushing. The only thing that I have to say about Jaden that does scare me a little bit is, and as you saw it with his injury to his ribs, he takes hits. He's a quarterback that initiates contact and takes hits sometimes. And in the NFL, you can't do that because you get something hurt because these guys are running full steam, and not every quarterback is dad bod like Patrick Mahomes and can run people over, right? Not every quarterback's Cam Newton or Ben Roethlisberger, where if you hit him, it's like, you might bounce off him. You know what I mean? I mean, Cam was infamous for that, for just initiating contact and getting 3 or 4 more yards. Same thing with Ben Roethlisberger. When he was under center, if they needed a quarterback sneak, he got 2 yards just by falling. You know what I mean? The dude was like the size of a defensive lineman, it seemed like.
Yeah,
but
huge.
yeah, that's why they called him Big Ben. But with Washington and me, I didn't think you could do it in a season. I didn't think you could turn around in a season. But if they continue to do what they do, and I mean, if they lose less than 5-6 games this season, that's not only a win, that's a surprise to me. And that's a team that could have more than 10 wins. And you look at one draft and it changes everything. And quarterback, pretty much does that. And a couple other positions that they have as well. And some key guys that are playing very well with young talent. And then on the Chicago side, like you said, Caleb definitely has struggled. You saw that in times at college as well, right? The last season, he definitely struggled, but he didn't have any time. And you do see that with Chicago still with that offensive line. He doesn't necessarily have really any time to get rid of that ball. And I'm not making excuses for him, but the progression year over year is going to be key for Caleb, because Jaden's already at a level right now that is, surpassed Caleb. But when you look at Caleb's game where he has a couple touchdowns, he looks like a franchise quarterback, and I think he can absolutely lock that in.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think it sucks because for Caleb, you have these kind of phenoms, coming out the past 2 years with Jaden Daniels and C.J. Stroud, kind of making everyone else look bad, So I think if you kind of take a just circle, go in on Caleb individually and look over the course of 10, 20 years into the past, like, I think he's doing pretty all right. I think he's doing just fine. There have been so many worse situations out there with with other quarterbacks that they shall not be named, busts in many different places, so I think he's doing just fine. He's getting better every single week, and he went up against a really tough defense. You got to consider that as well. Dan Quinn is a very good defensive coordinator. Look what he did in Dallas, and look what he's doing over there in Washington now. So he takes talent and he makes it better, and he fits them into the best places. So with Caleb, that was a tough matchup to go against, and I thought he, didn't play the worst ball that he possibly could, and that's a W for a rookie quarterback. It could be a lot worse. He could be like Indianapolis, where he's just checking out of the game because he's a little too tired, But
Well, you kind of segue to the next point. We're going to go to there right now. I mean, yeah, I'd never seen anything like that. Subbed himself out. Micah went on his podcast, Micah Parsons, defensive end for the Cowboys, and was like, "Dude, if you're tired, don't ever say that. Like, don't ever speak those words." He got hit. He could have just been like, come out and, something's going on here. Like, look, I get he's an honest guy, but I mean, you can't do that, especially with, every guy that's just out there on the field the entire time. You know what I mean? It's like you just can't do that. Never seen anything like that. I haven't seen anything like that in college.
Never.
And I've never seen anything like that in the pros until then. And honestly, I've seen quite a bit of high school football games because I like football. And I don't know if I've seen that in a high school football game either. So, and I was born in California. Now I'm in Florida, lived in Texas. So the best states in terms of football in Texas, I've seen it all, folks.
That's true.
So, in Texas, we went into those big stadiums in Allen and went and saw some games, and that was crazy. Those stadiums are bigger than colleges, bigger than so many colleges, some SEC schools, which is just insane to think about. Anyway, what the hell, man? You can't.
Yeah.
You just can't, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't watch it, but when I saw it back and when I heard about it at the beginning, I went, "Oh no, he's in big trouble." Like there is no way that this is not going to be a massive story, and it's just blown up, just like the Chicago thing. I mean, it's not a good week for the Chicago Bears and the Indianapolis Colts. But here's the thing: you go watch the Colts with Joe Flacco in it. Hell, you go watch the Browns with Joe Flacco in it. They look better. Oh, yeah. They look better. So it's just like, I get you can't start Joe Gunslinging Flacco, Fu Manchu Flacco in the playoffs. Unbelievable look that man had there. The sweater all the way down to the chin is top notch, Mr. Flacco. Please bring it back. But he gave him a better chance to win in that game, and you're just sitting there like, what do we do? You know what I mean? What do we do at this point? Now, you look at Anthony Richardson and you look at his time in Indianapolis. Injury riddled with flashes, right?
Yeah.
He's definitely got flashes. I think he threw like a 70-yard touchdown like before in that game, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was this game that I was watching. He's got a cannon.
He does.
He's got traits and attributes out the wazoo. He's got stuff that not other guys have at the position. And unfortunately, he went out for a play. And you've seen what's going to happen. How long he's benched? If Joe Flacco goes out there and doesn't have a good game, I could literally see him coming in at like half. But every time Joe Flacco's given an opportunity, he just rolls with it. So it could be a couple weeks. If Anthony Richardson's your fantasy quarterback, you probably aren't doing so well anyway. But maybe drop him. Not really. Don't drop him just because if you're in like a 12-man league, Anthony Richardson gets picked up the next day, and he could legitimately get like 50 yards every single time with rushing the ball. But the Indianapolis Colts, that's enough to talk about them. We mentioned it a little bit earlier with the Eagles. The Eagles.
I haven't talked about it at all.
You don't want to hit the Colts?
No, I do want to hit the Colts.
You don't want to hit the Colts. Hit the Colts. Then we're going to go on to the Eagles because we skipped past them.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying. I think it's a very big deal. I think that like you said, it's not something we've ever seen before. With the NFL too, and I think it's a big talking point, especially for not only what is happening in the league, but not what's happening with the NFL in general. Because I think this is probably one of the biggest stories that did come out of this week. What did there's so many questions that you can ask about the Colts organization and just the development of quarterbacks in general. I saw a stat that came out that was talking about, the NFL has like a developmental problem with quarterbacks and things of that nature. But, I really don't think that is true. Given you have quarterbacks like Jordan Love, and CJ Stroud out there just absolutely kind of balling out, just being a literal development in a single system, So I thought that was a little false, but at the same time, like, what do you do with a quarterback like this? You draft this guy extremely high. You draft this guy to be your franchise quarterback for the foreseeable future. And you throw him in there pretty much week one last year. He gets hurt. He doesn't really have a rookie season to look back on, or a whole lot of experience in general to look back on, especially in college as well. And this guy's extremely raw, So in my mind, you look at what the Packers did with Jordan Love, what the Chiefs did with Mahomes, and these are the examples everyone goes to every single time someone brings up this argument, but it's because it's true. I feel like he probably should have sat. He probably, you looking back on it, it's definitely a bigger conversation. But at one point, he was like 2 for 17 or something like that. His completion percentage is really bad. It's historically bad, and he is not playing well as an NFL quarterback. And on top of that, he subbed himself out of the game because he wasn't conditioned well enough for that game. So what does that say about the coaching staff? What does that say about the training staff? I don't know. I'm sure that their facilities are fine over there in Indianapolis. I'm sure that they got a lot of good stuff, going for them. Andrew Luck played there and he looked just fine. I've seen multiple quarterbacks play there and they've been just fine. So I think it just pretty much falls on Richardson at that point. Like you said, he probably should have lied in that press conference, it's just what kind of message does that send to the team? What kind of message does that send to the coaching staff? And what kind of message does that send to the fan base in general? It's like, okay, let's go. You're in a divisional matchup against, an AFC South matchup that is very important early in the season that will matter, later on down the line if you have a chance and you win some more games. In Houston, they just lost their number one wide receiver, so they could be taking a dip and lose some more games in the future. So this was a very, very important game for them. And the fact that he just kind of was like, yeah, I'm good. It's just it doesn't send a good message. It kind of feels like he was almost giving up on that play for a little bit. You don't see the top guys in the NFL doing that. Maybe at like a punter, but not a quarterback. Because your job is to go out there and stay in for the full game.
I mean, if you're a punter, actually, I don't think so, because I don't know if they have two punters on the team. I think if you're a punter, it's like, I'm not going out. The coach is like, the hell you aren't. Like, get on out there, bud. But no, look, I get what you're saying, and I think you asked the question, what message does it send? I mean, think about it, right? You can say it if you want to. You can disagree or agree. I would say on the offensive side of the ball, aside from so many players in the NFL, aside from so many leaders in the NFL, I would say there we go. On the offensive side of the ball, there is a leader. Mm-hmm. And on the defensive side of the ball, there is a leader. As captain of the defense, that's the captain of the offense. And the quarterback typically gets that job. And the quarterback has to be a guy that goes into the locker room and commands the locker room and gets the respect of everybody else. A young quarterback has to do that from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And Anthony Richardson, like you said, did get injured. I am a full believer in sitting a quarterback the entire first season unless they absolutely have to play. Mm-hmm. Now, you have cases like C.J. Stroud. You have cases like Jaden Daniels. You have cases like Joe Burrow. You have these cases, right? You have these guys that start immediately and are that good. Okay. For me, I would personally play them in a preseason game, and I get it. They're playing against the second and third string, but if they light up the second and third string, there's a good chance that they could have a decent game against the first string. So that could tell you something, right? But then you're risking the injury of a quarterback that you just drafted that could be your franchise, goes down in the preseason, and you don't even give yourself a chance for the season. So for me, it's a coaching call. And unfortunately, in today's game, the coach does get to make the decisions on who plays, but there's a guy who owns the team. Or there's a guy who is a general manager of the team who says, no, we drafted him, he's playing. And in the organization of the Indianapolis Colts, when they came out and said he started, they said that early.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a lot of, we had some fans reach out to us on social media. We had our friends reach out to us and go, what do you think? Because you were talking about a couple months ago how this guy didn't have enough college tape, and now he's starting. Well, I think you're seeing what's happening. Unfortunately, you don't give these guys time to develop because Anthony Richardson not only took an injury, he took a bad injury.
Very bad.
He was out for like the whole season. Now, this is what happens. And look, he's coming back from an injury. He's coming back from an injury already this season.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you could point to that. But what
just
message does it send?
I just don't
You
know if
don't
it's an
quit
excuse.
on your team.
Yeah, no,
It's not.
I completely agree. But continue.
Yeah, it's absolutely not an excuse. I'm right there with you. That's why you lie about it. If you're Anthony Richardson, he'll never make that mistake again. No other quarterback will ever make that mistake again. And also, you cannot do that. Because like you said, it's like you're quitting on your team. Think about the offensive linemen.
What are they supposed to do?
Do they come out every play?
No.
No.
Do the receivers once every, couple plays, maybe,
Yeah. They have their different packages that come in. They have their different wide receivers. They have their different plays. They have the same thing with the running backs, right?
Yes.
But the linemen stay there. And the linemen are like 150 pounds over you in blocking you. And that just a message to them alone for me, I'm shocked that happened. But
yeah. And the thing too is it's not a situation where I think, you can compare everyone equally on a football field, right? Like you said, he's the leader of that offense. In general, he's the leader of that team, So like you said, it's going to send a bad message to the whole locker room in general. But I think as well, you're just held to a higher standard as a quarterback. I think that you should be the person who's going out there and leading this team to victory. That's kind of how we say them. We call them, you know, the generals, of the offense, kind of the leader, like we said, the franchise quarterback. It's one of the hardest positions to play in sports, just in general. Just what the amount of things that you have to consider in your head, and the amount of the intelligence that you have to have, the studying and the dedication that you have to the game. You're supposed to be the first one in the building, the last one to leave. And when you got a guy who's just not, I'm not saying that he doesn't put in the work or anything like that, but he's clearly not conditioned, and maybe that's his style of play, and maybe that's the training staff, like I said, but it just, it's not a leader. So I think it's going to be a good growth and learning experience for him. You got January Joe Flacco just sitting waiting, and I think if he sits behind him for the rest of the season, unless they get out of playoff contention or anything like that, I think that maybe we'll see Anthony Richardson later down the line. But I think he needs to sit and he needs to learn behind Joe Flacco, a Super Bowl winning quarterback who also has a lot of similar arm talent that Anthony Richardson does, still in his game. Maybe not the running ability, but I think that he can and he can learn to make better decisions on the football field and kind of off the football field as well, or at least in between plays, right? So I we've kind of gone at length at this, but I think it's important because it's never really happened before, too. So I think it's interesting, and it sucks that he's on a kind of the butt end of it for being honest. At the end of the day, he was like, "I'm just kind of gassed, man." But he did kind of circle back and was like, "I have individual talents that are just not many quarterbacks in the leagues do, which is great, but there's only 32 spots. There's only 32 starting quarterbacks. If you start getting full of yourself, after being, having produced almost literally nothing, that spot's going to disappear real quick. And I think we just saw what happened yesterday, and that it's not his anymore. So I hope he gets another shot on the Colts. I think he'll be just fine. But if not, it was a good run for him on the Colts. But he's got a lot of talent. He's got a lot of talent, and they'd be stupid to let him go. But you have a just fine quarterback with Joe Flacco sitting right there for him to learn behind. And I don't know. That's where I would move forward.
Yeah, you nailed it. We'll move on now. Sorry for those watching on YouTube. There was a guy going through somebody's trash. Welcome to Florida. I was like, am I actually looking at that? So I took a double take. He did.
Maybe it was Anthony Richardson.
Oh,
isn't he a Florida
guy? Poor guy. Garbage. No, Anthony's just going to be just fine whenever he goes and starts, and they get him some help, and he continues to coach and to get better in that system, and continue to get coached and continue to learn at this point. Because right now you're sitting behind Joe and you're taking in everything and knowledge. It's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I know he already was. Watch how he plays. Watch how he, does the small things. Just follow him around like a little bug. You know what I mean? Just always be there, take in knowledge, because at this level, there's so much more. And you can see that there is the physical side and there's the mental side. And every position, every player, every great player is that mental side's top notch. So you gotta, not saying Anthony Richardson's not saying he's not going to be there, But you're right. From what we've seen from him, it's not necessarily what you like to see out of that high of a draft pick. But hey, it's been a couple years. We're going to see how it goes. Moving on. The Patriots take down the Jets. And Drake May went out early with a concussion. I was watching that game. It was not a pretty game, but for me, you got to shout out the Pats when they took down the Jets, because since Devontae Adams came over, all of talk has been that the Jets are going to win. I picked against them, or I picked them, and got absolutely destroyed. This team, is a little bit far off in my opinion. Aaron Rodgers specifically, just these press conferences afterwards, man, I want to tune into those more than I want to tune into the game, because he just blames everybody else. He literally just blames everybody else. But at the same time, you go back and you watch the game and you're like, he's not wrong. so it's a different way of doing things with Aaron Rodgers. It always has been. But not to go at length about either of these teams, but the Patriots are playing good hard-nosed football. If they're in games, they somehow find a way sometimes and go out and get the win. So you like to see that. If you're a Pats fan, continue to build off that. And then if you're a Jets fan, unfortunately, Jets kind of same thing as Chicago. You just have these just historic franchises that have just not done a ton recently. And, we're talking about length about the Cowboys, right there with you. But Jets this year with Aaron Rodgers, I'm not sure that the Devontae Adams addition, we were talking about a couple weeks ago how important that was, how great it was, how key it was. I think it was. He's still running the offense, but not the immediate impact that you would have thought. Now, given it's only been 2 games, that's it. He's gonna get some yards. Don't get me wrong, but with an offense with Garrett Wilson as your number 2, Devontae Adams is your number 1, Breece Hall is your running back, and then Braylon Allen is your backup running back with a decent offensive line. Not bad, decent offensive line, in a good, or not a good, I'd say decent defense. They've kind of fallen off since, years past, but that's a game that he should win.
Easily. It's a game that he should win easily. I mean, it's just, I think maybe a little bit has to do with it. You got Gerard Mayo. He's coming out the week before, and he's calling his team soft. Smart move. I think it put a fire under their butt. And I think they went out and they're like, let's go beat the New York Jets. These guys look weak, and they did. They looked very weak. But I mean, that's just more the same thing for Jets fans, pretty much like you said. But I just don't think, with all that talent on the offensive side of the ball, you look back on the decision to fire Saleh and you're like, I don't know if this was a great idea, because now not only is our offense struggling, our defense sucks too. So now we're also just losing games to teams that we really shouldn't be losing against,
To interject there, also not to mention the fact, if you look at where they took the timeouts and how they managed the game, dude, it was bad.
Really?
And it was clear coaching. I'm pretty sure they called a timeout on either a 2-point conversion or like an extra point, something like that. I remember watching that at the game, and I was like, did they just do that? Did they really just do that?
It's like waste.
That's a play that you already have lined up. So keep going.
Yeah, it's bad. It's real bad. And I don't think Aaron Rodgers just being there is going to fix it. It's looking pretty grim. I think they're like 2-6, right now. So they're lined up for a good draft pick, and Aaron Rodgers is not getting any younger. So he's not going to be there for too much longer. And the team looks fine. They've got a really good roster, but they just need to get someone in there who's actually going to coach them up and give them a chance to succeed, because I just don't think I don't think they have it right now. I don't think they have the coaching ability to win games in the NFL. Granted, they've been very close. It's not like they were horrible in that game, but when you got the New England Patriots with Jacoby Brissett, who didn't intend to start and play in that game, going out in there and beating you, with Ramondre Stevenson having, I think he had like 2 rushing touchdowns too. So like, it's just a team that you shouldn't have lost to. Now, granted, they with the records and everything like that, it could have gone either way, but on paper. But you look at it as just like with a football mind, you're like, that's Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams. Like we said with all these names, they don't need to be losing to the New England Patriots. So that's a game they should have won, 100%. But we'll see. They got to go on a run here if they want to do anything this season, really. And they've got a tough schedule remaining too. So their division is not easy either. They still have to play Buffalo again. So I don't see a whole lot of postseason success for this squad, at least at the current moment. and the future looks a little dim, unfortunately, for Jets fans.
A bit. Lions doesn't look dim. They put up a 50 burger
Might be the
against the Titans. I was watching that game
brightest
in the
light.
first half. Do what?
This might be like the brightest light ever. The
Literally,
future looks so
literally.
bright.
And honestly, I mean, I gotta say it on the NFC side. I gotta say it. Detroit's taken over number one. I mean, we called that whenever they played the Vikings and they were going to beat number one, but Detroit's taken over number one. The Vikings have fallen off a cliff. We called that. They, even though they only have 2 losses, not necessarily a cliff. And then
2 straight.
the night, it's this team is so good on every single level. And we said it last year. This is a coach that you not only want to play for, but you want to run through a freaking wall. No matter what, every time you're going to war. If you just some clips that I've seen from him on post game speeches, like this guy, it just wears everything on his sleeve with that team and is just so honest with that team. Like the clip that went viral about him talking about contact, like that's a guy that cares about his players. Like, look, guys, Dan Quinn talking, like, look, like, paraphrasing, like, look, guys, we have to initiate this contact because I don't want you to get injured in the regular season. I don't want to hurt you. I want to put you on that field and give you the best chance to succeed. And it's like, I have to do that physically as well as mentally. It's like, this is just such a great guy. And the Lions, I mean, out of not every franchise, but I mean, they're top 5 franchise that deserves to win because they've for so long and they haven't won.
They've had so many good players too.
So many good players. Prime Stafford, prime Calvin Johnson, prime Barry Sanders. Like, you've got these unbelievable players that if they played anywhere else with anybody else, they might have won it. But unfortunately, they didn't. The Lions have a really good chance. The Lions, in my opinion, have the best running backs in the league, the best 1-2 punch. Like you said, Sonic and Knuckles, right? That's the nickname. Just top notch there. We already went on the rant about that one last week. But defensively, offensively, special teams wise, they're locked in everywhere. And to me, a new place, new team, number one in the NFC, and it's not even close. It's Detroit, and then it's everybody else. Because these guys are very consistent, and you watch the first part of that game, you were like, oh, a kink in the armor. Here we go. Here we go. It's a trap game. Just kidding, 30 points later. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And you're watching that game as a fan going, Jared Goff on the bench, man. I started Dak. Like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? What the heck am I doing? Now, last thing I'm going to say against the Lions, and I'll let you go. Do they have a hole on that team? Like, you could say they're cornerbacks because they don't have a big name there, but they're playing pretty well. So, I mean, what do you – I guess you could say the hole now that I answered my own question, Aiden Hutchinson being gone, duh. But this team's still rattling off 2 wins after it happening, playing the way they have, playing that good defensively the way they have. It's like top notch from Detroit.
Absolutely top notch. And I think to answer your question, yeah, I think it is Aiden Hutchinson. I think the secondary has gotten a lot better since they've gotten Brian Branch back there, former Alabama guy, and I think he's played really, really well in kind of that hard-nosed system that Dan Campbell led defense. So I think the only other place that I would say that there's a big hole is now back at wide receiver. Now that Jameson Williams has all this stuff kind of going on around him, it seems like he just kind of always has it. He's suspended right now. And I don't really know, all the details of like whatever is going on with him too. So
he's got 2 games suspension, and there's reports of something else happening that could possibly lengthen that suspension right now. But those reports are not anything like conclusive or, come out yet. But in the NFL, it's Roger Goodell. And if he gets a little...
And they've been cracking down on it in recent memory too. So you could see something going out of that, coming out from that. But like they really don't have a hole because the defense kind of stepped up in Aiden Hutchinson's backup, and I could totally see them going and getting like a pass rusher, like a Zadarius Smith from Cleveland, something like that, who's a defensive end who's just completely, Browns are out of the mix at this point too. So I think they could be a little bit aggressive towards the end of the trade deadline, maybe go and get a pass rusher, but. they look good. I think, if not, I don't know if they're obviously record wise they're not the best team in the NFL, but they sure feel like it. I 100% in the NFC, but I think the only team they're competing with in the AFC is maybe the Chiefs. Because I just don't. I mean, Cleveland beat Baltimore last week, so I think you could say that I just Detroit gets a leg up on Baltimore at this point. And then I think that really only leaves the Chiefs. So I think they're number one, if not number two. So I think they're one of the best teams in the NFL. They really don't have a hole, and it's impossible to stop them. They do whatever they want, whenever they want. I mean, you got Jared Goff. He's not even throwing for 100 yards, and he has 3 touchdowns. And they put up 52 points against Tennessee. In a game, like you saw Buffalo at times struggle against them, like in the previous week, too. And we know Buffalo's offense is high flying, too. So that, give credit to that defense as well, because they just did a fantastic job against old Mason Rudolph, over there, who's been playing some pretty good football. He's been playing really well, and that's the team beat. That's the great offense, and they look like they're gonna win a Super Bowl, man. That they look like, at least my way too early. They look like the Super Bowl favorites as of right now. I think that they're the best team. I mean, they're putting up like 40-point games at least back to back. Like they're on a historic run. Jared Goff is playing the best football of his career, and he's like hardly missing a pass. And it looks too easy. They're just destroying anybody and everybody. But we got to see how it happens throughout a season, because that's the kicker for a lot of these teams, is can they do it throughout a season? That's what I want to see. But I think that they are going to pretty easily get that towards the end of the season. We'll see how it plays out. They got a big match against Green Bay. I think they win that match. A little nugget too early, but it's kind of their division at this point. We'll see what goes on going there. But I won't leak any more picks for anyone.
And that's a really good division too. Just that division alone. I mean, they've got just so many good teams in that division with
Imagine
like only
if the
2 losses
Bears
as
won.
well.
Imagine if the Bears won this past week. They'd like all be 5-2. Like basically all of them would be 5-2.
I know that team. I mean, in the Bears, I mean they should be 5-2. So that's just that's one of those. But shout out to your boy Jameis, gets his first start in over 2 years and takes down the Ravens like you just said. Josh Allen, still rolling. That's another team in the AFC that's kind of solidified themselves. Unfortunately, Stephon Diggs, the wide receiver, like you mentioned, is out for the season. But another acquisition, we had Deontay Johnson, who is the former Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver, speedy, number 18, if I'm not mistaken, at the time for Pittsburgh, got taken to Baltimore, and DeAndre Hopkins, Nuke himself, is on the Kansas City Chiefs. So now they're rolling with the veteran leadership with Kelsey and DeAndre Hopkins, and I can't wait to see it. You saw how happy he was, and it's like I just remember that guy being the best wide receiver in the league. Prime Hop. So if he can give you just a slight bit of what he used to have, I mean, that team's going to continue to roll. And the Chiefs right there, man, they're undefeated. I think the Lions, I'm going to agree with you. I got to give them the nod to number 2. I can't give them number 1 yet just because, they do, like you said, the record doesn't indicate it. But Patrick Mahomes, man, he's not playing that well, and they're still getting the win. So, we're going to see how long that goes. Let's jump to the NFL matchup preview section because we have been talking at length about NFL news. We have a Thursday night game this week where the Jets are playing again at night and the Texans. And the Jets are actually favored right now.
I don't know what's going on with that. It's kind of weird.
I don't know.
It's kind of weird.
What's going on with that? I'm not necessarily a guy that bets, right? I'm not a guy that likes to do the sports betting. But this is one that I think you just got to go for. The Texans hammer the Texans this week. Hammer the Texans, because there's no reason that the Jets should be a favorite. I don't care if they're at home. How are they a favorite? I mean, I guess it's home, but who do you got? Because, I mean, I was shocked when I saw that today.
Give me the Texans by like a mile. Nice. I think there's just so many arrows pointing to the Texans. The only arrow that's pointing to the Jets is the fact that Diggs is out for the season. That's it. They're gonna have Tank Dell, and I guess Dalton Schultz is gonna be their number 2 receiver. You know what I mean in that sense. But like, I just don't think that's enough to really make the Jets a favorite. Like you said, I guess they're at home, but Jets stink. Their defense stinks. They can't coach, and they're on a short week going in. I get it, they're at home, but they're on a short week against a team that I, that's really good. That's leading their division. I think they're like 6-2. Probably vying for one of those top 2, if not 3 spots. And they can maybe even get a bye if the Chiefs lose a game or two. So like they're right in the mix. So it's amazing that they're even. I think it's like a 2. It's like a 1.5 to 2 point favorite, but like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I got the Texans by probably a couple scores. They've just been if Joe Mixon gets going, it's over. If Tank Dell gets going, it's over. Like that's the benefit of having an absolutely packed wide receiver room is that if 2 of them go down, you still got a number 1 just like hanging out with Tank Dell, who's going to take the top off of pretty much any defense that he finds. So they still have to worry about so much with the Jets. So I just don't see a world where the Jets could possibly win this. But vintage Aaron Rodgers in prime time could have an effect. Yeah, he could do something. He can make it closer than I think, but I think the Texans got this by a mile.
And the Sunday matchup, we always pick the Cowboys game, so they're in that time slot. You got Cowboys versus the Falcons.
I think they're playing in Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm gonna go Cowboys on this one, just because I'm still on the storyline that the Cowboys are gonna get to 8-9 or 9-8. Just because I think that they're gonna make it a game. They just always do, and Dak's never gonna be the guy that's just gonna go just have a horrible record. I could be totally wrong, and I would be happy if I was wrong because that would mean a good draft pick. But I just don't. I don't know. I think Atlanta's a team that they can beat, and I think that they're gonna. It's not San Francisco where that defense is impossibly hard to get through. I think that they're gonna have a little bit more success. It's a team that Dak sees, and usually does beat. You remember that historic comeback against the Falcons with the watermelon kick, not too long ago. So I guess they're still pretty mad about it. But I think that I think Dallas wins this game, but it's going to be by a field goal, if not like even less. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. That's how they win these games too. So just a little old fashioned, Kirk Cousins going back and playing Dallas. So I got remnants of Washington versus Dallas in my head. So I got Dallas.
I'm gonna go Falcons on this one because Dallas to me is just not showed me that they can compete with teams that are first in their division and or second in the division. I know that you beat the Steelers, who at the time were first in their division, but to me the Falcons are starting to play really well, and I think that that game against Tampa Bay showed me a lot. Mm-hmm. The fact that they could beat Tampa Bay, I don't think that Dallas can take down Tampa right now, and the fact that the Falcons beat them makes me lean toward the Falcons in this one. But bright side for the Cowboys, Deron Bland is active and is coming back, the cornerback that was injured. So
huge.
Yeah, it's huge. And you do have your number 2 cornerback, so I think that's going to be good, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time for him to get there. And also, you've got Kyle Pitts who's playing very well, and I don't know who's matching up against him. To be honest, I don't know who they're going to throw against him. It might be Overshown, but at the same time, they throw Donovan Wilson down there sometimes. They throw down the safeties, and nobody can cover Pitts. So I don't know. That to me, that's going to be a tough one and a matchup nightmare. And then Drake London is going to get at least 1 touchdown. And by the way, Dallas doesn't do run defense very well. They have a 2-headed monster there in Atlanta. So I'm going to go Atlanta.
I got a question for you. Do you stick Diggs? Do you stick him and put him on Drake London, like just the whole game? Because I don't know if that's going to work out. Or do you put Deron Bland on him? You see what Bland's got.
Neither. I think that they both have their favorite side of the field, and whatever their favorite side of the field that's kind of what they're going to do. And especially because Deron Bland's coming back, this is his first game off of injury. Mm-hmm. I think you got to actually not give him the number 1 guy as much as you can.
You got Mooney on the other side.
I know. Next matchup, who do you have with the Lions and the Packers?
Give me the Lions. The offense is in full swing. It's just absolutely, they're one of the best teams in the NFL, like we said. And Jordan Love is questionable for this game. We don't know who's going to suit up for the Packers. I think it's probably going to be Jordan Love at the end of the day. He looks like he's maybe getting some reps in practice. I'm not too sure, but regardless, I think an injured Jordan Love or a fully healthy Malik Willis, I don't really think either gives you the best chance to beat the Lions. And the Lions are this is the best Lions team I've ever seen right now. They're playing the best football that they have played under Dan Campbell at this moment, and it's going to be hard to stop that attack. Green Bay's defense has been playing well, and it's a divisional opponent, but give me the Lions, easy.
I got Lions in this one too, just because Jordan Love's not there, and also because the Lions are the best team in the NFC. It's going to be very hard for me to pick against the Lions or the Chiefs, honestly, the rest of the year. We have got the Sunday night game. Anthony Richardson was going to be Sunday nighter this week, but nope. It is Joe Flacco Colts against the Vikings, and I got the Vikings in this one. I think they've come off of a couple games skid. They've played some tough opponents, but I got the Vikings in this one. You've seen that Sam Darnold can actually pass the ball at a very good rate and be a top 15 quarterback at times. So for me, I'm gonna go Vikings on this one, especially because the Colts, right now they need a win, but I'm not sure that the Vikings team is a team where they can get it. So I'm gonna go Vikings on this one.
I'm gonna go Colts. I might be crazy, but the Vikings they have 2 losses the past 2 weeks. It's not a good look, but they looked weak against the LA Rams with a full Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. They looked weak, and I thought that the Vikings' defensive front was a lot better than initially, or than I do think now, because I thought Kyron was fantastic that night. I thought that he went out and went on a mission, and he kind of bludgeoned that defensive line of the Vikings. Now, who do you got for the Indianapolis Colts sitting back there at running back with one of the better offensive lines in the NFL? You got old Jonathan Taylor, and he's a man on a mission right now.
Yeah.
So I don't. If the Colts are able to control the ball in this game, I think they win easy, because I think Joe Flacco is going to give you a great chance to win every single time he comes in, and he plays really, really well. Especially for some reason when he's coming off the bench. So this is just it's Sunday night, it's prime time, and I don't know if it's going to be a test for Sam Darnold continuing. But if they're able to turn this around, I think it's going to be on the back of Sam Darnold. I think that the Colts defense, I think they're kind of undersold as a bad team, in this division as well, because they're just, with the not success, with the not failure, but just the recent implosion of Anthony Richardson and his whole story. I think that it's just going to kind of propel the Colts for this, and I just think they match up a little bit better. Colts defense is very unsung. Zaire Franklin, I think he's leading the NFL in tackles, if not, right up there. Nick Cross has been playing fantastically. Their whole defensive line, DeForest Buckner, these guys are going to get to the quarterback. And the Vikings just lost, their left tackle in this past game that we just saw. And he's very, very good. And that was, I think, a main part of the success that they've been having too. So give me the Colts. I think that they just match up better. And I think it's just going to be a storyline with Joe Flacco, how it is every single year, every time he comes in and he saves a franchise. And it's Sunday Night Football. There's no bigger stage in the middle of the season than Sunday Night Football. So I got the Colts, man. I got them.
Hey, you sounded confident. You didn't sway my opinion, but hey, maybe some listeners decide to throw a little bit of pepper on the Colts and Mr. Flacco, and Jonathan Taylor, not wrong. That's a guy that can, if he takes over a game, he can take over a game. But I don't know. Minnesota, to me, they have 5 wins this season, and in those 5 wins, they've looked pretty damn good. But Monday night, last game that we're going to pick this week in the NFL, we have the Bucs versus the Chiefs. I kind of already gave it away. I said I'm not going to pick against the Chiefs or the Lions for the rest of the season, pretty much. So I'm going to go Chiefs here, but I do think it's going to be a good game. If you had Mike Evans and Mike Evans wasn't out and Chris Godwin was full go, it may be a game where I could see Tampa kind of pulling it out. But the defense, didn't play that well against the Falcons and hasn't really played that well these past couple weeks. And the Chiefs are undefeated and Mahomes is not playing well, which means Mahomes is going to get right, which means it's coming. And he hasn't had a game this year where he's balled out like he has in years past. So this could be one of those games. Give me the Chiefs on this one. But with Baker, it's always going to be a shootout. It's just how many of those passes are interceptions and how many of those are 30-plus yard passes, right?
Yeah. And I think the MO of this game is literally just going to be let Baker sit back and throw, because that's pretty much every time Baker does play the Chiefs, that's what they let him do. And he makes mistakes. And that's what's, I think, is going to be coming, especially without his number 1 and number 2 receiver, which have pretty much derailed this entire offense. Especially when they have, I guess, like a 3-headed horse at running back. That's pretty much the thing that they're going to rely on. And Cade Otton, I think he looked really good last week, but I think it's just because there's no one else. The receivers didn't really get a whole lot of separation against Atlanta, but the Chiefs, they're a Super Bowl winning defense. I think they know how to make plays in big games, and this is a huge game. So with Kelsey going on, he finally got a touchdown. It was happy for me. He still kicked my butt in fantasy, but it was a good day for tight ends, and it's just, I'm gonna pick the Chiefs until they lose. I think that's pretty much the most sane reaction here too. So all the arrows are pointing over to KC. So give me KC. I like them in this. It's Monday night football, because it's just Baker is shit. I love him, but top 2 receivers out, defense not playing that well. It's tough. It's not going to be a good matchup.
Tough scene there. Moving on to college football, the Aggies are number 1 in the SEC, coming off of a huge win against LSU. 12th man really came alive, and Marcel Reed is the new quarterback for the rest of the season. Wagman, however you want to say it, struggled. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He struggled. The offense struggled when he was in there. And as soon as you put Reed in, it instantly opened up another avenue of that offense that you did not have previously. And for me, it's pretty obvious that Reed's going to be the guy going forward. But the Aggies take down LSU in a game that, they were favored technically, but I think a lot of people picked LSU in that game. And for me, it's awesome because, we're Aggies. That's our alma mater. We'll see what happens. I think it's this season is very close of the remnants of the Johnny Manziel season where lost only 2 games. It's a high possibility that could happen if A&M loses 3 games this season. I think you call that an absolute failure. But right now, you have a defense that's playing stupid good. And you have a defensive end with Scorton that is, this guy, the length of this guy and the way that he gets around the opposing offensive lineman is special. Someone that's that lanky, if you think about it, as the defensive lineman, if you're that big, it's hard to get around guys because it's a big guy going up against a big guy. And when you look at these offensive linemen, they're just so massive. And he gets by or is in the backfield seemingly every other play. It's not every play, but it's literally every other play. And A&M's tackling now. You saw in the early season, they weren't necessarily sticking those tackles against Notre Dame. That was a big reason that the Aggies lost that game. Now they're not missing tackles. And they are gang tackling. They got 3 Aggies there every time, which is something you like to see. So Aggies are playing at an all-time high right now. They play South Carolina this weekend, which is going to be a big game. It's at night. Primetime Aggies again, but give me the Aggies in this matchup. But specifically, Tanner, what did you see against South Carolina? What did you see against LSU? What are you going to see against South Carolina? And tell me about them Aggies, baby.
Giga Mags, obviously they took a huge dub, and you go into that first half and you're like, all right, here we go. Same bullshit, same thing we've been looking at the past however many seasons since Johnny left. That's the perspective of an Aggie fan at halftime. And I know a lot of people turn that game off because of the failures from Connor Wigman, how in just this season alone, he's had some big moments, but really overall he struggled immensely. And I think that the absolute just the best decision. Obviously, you saw it work out, but just putting Reed in there, I think he's a freshman, and just
Yes.
it unlocked a new part of that offense that you really didn't see before. Obviously with Connor, you had, he had an ability to throw the ball downfield and vertically stretch that kind of field. But with Reed, he was, a horizontal runner. You know what I mean? With all those option plays, because you had no idea, because they basically ran an option pretty much every single time they lined up after that. Is the ball
And
going left with Reed? Is it going right with Daniels? Are they going up the
and,
middle with Moss? You
and
have
they
no
never picked
idea.
up Reed. They never picked up Reed. If you watch
Never.
that game, they never picked up Reed.
The only time they picked him up was on like that last drive when they got a
Yeah.
field goal instead of that touchdown after that fumbled
Yep.
snap. And the 2 drives before it, it looked like they were getting 15, 20 yards every single time running the ball. And that's the Texas A&M I know. That's the ground and pound team that needs to be there for an absolute powerhouse in the SEC. So I
Jeff
think that
Moss.
he is the quarterback, obviously moving forward, and I think it's no question. And he's, like we said, he's a freshman, so he's got a couple years left to develop that arm. And the passes that he did throw, the 2 passes were complete. One of them was a check down that led to like either a first and goal or a touchdown. I'm not really sure. I don't remember. But the other one was an absolute ripper over in the middle like of a cover 2 safety. And the guy I think it was Noah, and he just he went right through the middle and split the safeties basically, and just a dime right in his hand. So
Perfect.
it was a fantastic showing from him against one of the best teams in the country. A team that took down Ole Miss, which is a team that looked like another one of the best teams in the country. We came back on here the other week and we are like, I don't know how we lost. Well, it's because LSU is a good team and A&M's a better team. And I think that home field advantage does say a lot. And to your point, this team's rocking right now. This defense is absolutely insane. With Scorton in general, man, he's gonna. I don't know where he's gonna land. I after this, I want to
First round.
get your take on where you think he's gonna land specifically. If we're talking like upper half, lower half, maybe even a little nugget on, on which end of those.
I mean,
But
I think it's hard now because you have such a process in terms of the NFL draft, right?
mhm.
You have such a process of this NFL draft. It is so many things have to go right for you. If Scorton has an injury, it completely goes away, right? His draft rank immediately goes to the second or third round, especially because he's in the later part of the season. If he continues to do exactly what he's doing, and he does it in the college football playoff, depending upon how far the Aggies go, depending upon if they make the college football playoff, if he continues to do what he has to do or does what he does, he was a bright spot on the defense last season. And he was a bright spot on the defense this season. So for me, specifically, he was a bright spot on a defense, right? Not last season, but season before last. Scorton is a guy that has length and has stuff you can't necessarily teach. The way that this big, massive man can engage with an offensive lineman and bend his hips and has the ability to whip those arms out of the way not only shows power, it shows speed, and it shows quickness. And I understand that he's an Aggie, and I'm not saying he's the next Myles Garrett. I'm not saying that. I don't see him as that type of player. I actually see him more as like a bigger defensive end, like maybe a Danielle Hunter that maybe future on in the NFL puts on a little bit more size and has a little bit more speed. But right now, really what I see from him is, honestly, you nailed the guy earlier, Armstead. He's very similar to him because he's so lengthy.
Oh, DeForest
But
Buckner.
Thank you. Sorry, I get those guys mixed up.
Yeah, no worries.
DeForest Buckner, thank you. Both from Morgan. How do you play this guy? Right? Because on the A&M defensive line, you can say that everybody knows they're game planning against Scorton, right? But he's still successful.
Can't double
me, exactly. That to me, and he's in the SEC. That to me tells me that he's in my opinion a guaranteed first round pick. Now, if you're looking for a guy that you want to get to the quarterback every single time, he could potentially develop into that player for sure. Am I gonna take him in the top 10? We'll see what happens. Right now, what I'll say, because I haven't done enough research on the other guys, I don't know who would be in front of him, but I do know that this is gonna be a top-loaded class on the offensive side, specifically on the quarterback position. He's going in the first round, in my opinion. If he doesn't, he's going to be the steal of the second round. If he falls past that, people are absurd. I don't know if you saw the guy that played on the opposite side of Myles Garrett with Hall back when he played. Hall was solid, but he never got any spotlight. He went in like the third, fourth round area. Didn't pan out too well, but he also reminds me a lot of that guy. He has a lot of different guys in his game, but he hasn't necessarily honed it in over the last 2 seasons, and you're seeing it now. You're like, oh my gosh, this guy's an absolute player, an absolute phenom. Mm-hmm. So for me, long-winded answer, first round. Where in the first round? Got to do a little bit more research on my side, but I wouldn't be shocked to see him is a top 20 pick. But most likely right now, especially with recent years in defensive ends, I could stick him in that 18 to 30 range. I don't see him getting past those.
Yeah, I think this is probably his best game of the season. You almost saw him in the backfield pretty much every single time, pretty much putting pressure on Nussmeier, and I think that led to almost every single pick that he did throw, because those defensive backs have been playing out of their mind. I think that I've never seen an A&M team play this much just aggressive coverage and have this much success against LSU receivers, but I think that Scorton is a main contributor to that. And I think that he's probably had his best game of the season on Saturday night too. So we're going to see how he does moving forward, especially against like Texas. And if A&M beats Texas once, they're going to have to beat them twice and maybe even a third time too. So later on down the line, because guess what? They're in the SEC now, and that's the SEC championship. It's going to be Texas and someone else. So we'll see what happens. But
if A&M if A&M wins out and beats Texas, then Texas goes to 2 losses. I'm not sure if any other team at that time will have 1 loss.
Well, Georgia, yeah, because they could have it and they could be in there. And Georgia's, that's going to be a tough match. Regardless, they're going to have to play back-to-back playoff games, in the last week of the season, and then the championship round, if they do end up making it to the SEC championship. But we'll see how it pans out to that point. But they're in a great spot right now.
And to hit back on a previous point about Nick Scorton, I don't know if it was I laid it out well enough for you. He didn't play for A&M last year. He played for Purdue the previous 2 seasons. Last year at Purdue, he actually had a very good season with 10 sacks, and he still transferred over to A&M. So it was a bit shocking. So that's why when I said earlier he was a starter, he didn't start for A&M last year because he wasn't there. He was playing for Purdue, but had a pretty solid season. This year, he has had 22 total tackles, 17 solo tackles, 6 assisted tackles, and 5 sacks. In his entire career, he's had 17 sacks and 3 forced fumbles. He's had a forced fumble each season. So the numbers do not stand out as a guy that, if he goes top 10, it's like for example, Derek Barnett, right? When Derek Barnett came out of Tennessee, it was like, where's he going to go? Because he broke the sack record, the NCAA sack record, right? Where's he going to go? He didn't go crazy high. He went high, but he didn't go crazy high. So it's like, that's why I kind of pushed him back a little bit. Enough Aggie talk, because we're going to talk about him every week, because guess what? They're winning, and we usually don't get to talk about them that much. Woohoo, gigs. Another game this week that's the best matchup, in my opinion, always a good game. Alabama versus LSU, and right now they're fighting for their playoff lives, because if you lose that game, there is, I don't think, a chance that you make it into the playoffs. And the fact that you could have a playoff where Alabama or LSU is not there is absolutely insane to me. And you know what? We're going to save the rankings for next week, because there's a couple games this weekend that need to take place, because right now it's pretty similar. We're excited because A&M's in the top 10, but not a whole lot has changed other than that. You know what I mean? Not a ton has. And we'll get into it next week. And also because we still got 2 more sports to hit, folks. We're not done yet. We got the World Series now. So moving on to the World Series, Dodgers up 3-1. They got a game tonight. Quick points on my side. Aaron Judge, big old fat goose egg. Not a whole lot going on there. Freddie Freeman doing just the Lord's work.
Much.
The guy, every year, last year it was Corey Seager with the Rangers. Every year, some player just comes out of absolutely nowhere. It could be a star. So maybe not absolutely nowhere, but just puts a performance on where you're like, How are they doing this? They are single-handedly bringing their team back. Shohei Ohtani gets hurt the previous game, sliding into second base. Every Dodgers fan goes, oh, shit. You know what I mean? Oh, that's not good. And then Freeman just goes, and the bats are going. The Dodgers pitching was going up until last night when the Yankees destroyed them with 11 runs. But this Dodgers team, man, up 3-1 in the series and has been dominant through 2 games. Not dominant through 4. The Yankees could have won that game, that first game. The Yankees could have won that first game. I know it's been a while since that game has happened, but the Yankees lost to themselves on errors, and if I'm not mistaken, only had a couple outs, and they jacked a home run and then brought it within a couple. So what I'm saying is that the Dodgers have not played a complete World Series. Freddie Freeman has played a complete World Series, but this is clearly the better team in my opinion, and it's going to be shocking if the Yankees, I can see the Yankees getting one more. But coming back from 0-3, I don't know if that's ever happened in baseball. But what have you seen from this series? Because now you're a baseball guy. Because your team won last year, it's forced you to be a baseball guy.
I know. I mean, it's a fun World Series. This is obviously the one everyone wanted, but it's not going down the way everyone wanted. They wanted an absolute just 1-1, 2-2, 2-2, 3-3 going to Game 7. But it's not really looking like that's going to happen. And if you tell me that the Dodgers got to win one of the next 3, I'm going to pick the Dodgers pretty much every single time, especially with what they've been doing just in the postseason in general, with all the injuries that they've had to their pitching stuff. And just, I kind of looked at that game last night as like because they were pitching out of the bullpen, and it kind of looked like a freebie just to get their guys back in for Game 5. And, they still got to go back to LA, and we get it. They took a game off in New York. They took Game 4, but still got to go back to LA, and that's gonna be tough, So I think it was funny. You look back at I don't know what the guy in the stands grabbing the ball
from Mookie Betts.
Yeah, and he's just some drunk guy, and he's just like, give me the ball,
Do you see today that Rob Gronkowski came out and said that was his buddy in college? Like, how Rob Gronkowski is that?
That's amazing. I mean, they got kicked out. I saw that.
They're banned.
Yeah, and the MLB issued a statement today that they are banned, which, probably should have been. Probably don't grab a player's arm and force the ball out of his glove.
No.
But hey, if the Yankees go down and they complete this reverse sweep, they're gonna put that picture up in the middle of New York. Put a statue up of that guy outside of Yankee Stadium, because that dude single-handedly turned around the series. I think
He could have.
Single-handed.
Yankees fans, that's who you're pulling for. But it's been, it hasn't been a good World Series in the sense of going back and forth and wanting it to go to a Game 7. Mm-hmm. But being a guy that, unfortunately, every podcast, I'm an Angels fan. I picked the wrong team when I was a kid in LA. And, the Dodgers, the Dodgers are there. And the Dodgers have been there before in my lifetime as well. So we'll see what happens. Like you said, they got one of the next 3, and they're not down to their bullpen anymore because they're rested. So I'm going to go Dodgers. If they don't take it in New York, like you said, they go back to LA, and I think they could take it. And also, the longer you put this series on, it's good and bad for the Yankees, right? It's good in the sense of they're continuing to play the game, but it's bad because you're giving Shohei more time. Mm-hmm. Also, I got to say something. When Shohei's clearly like when he's clearly injured and you get a walk the first time you're at bat, and it seems like the pitcher wasn't even testing him, I was just shocked. I'm sitting there, and then I thought to myself, I'm like, no, you know what? That's how good Shohei is. Because dude, if somebody gets on base.
Look what he did this season, yeah.
If somebody gets on base this season, Shohei had, 50 home runs and 50 stolen bases? That's absurd. That's insane.
It's wrong.
And he didn't even pitch. He still pitches, guys. You got to remember that.
He still has another layer of his game, too.
Yeah, and they were talking about it. They were talking about. I was listening to a TSN podcast. It's called Overdrive. It's a hockey podcast, and they bring on the Canadians. And I was listening to their baseball segment. Man, those guys are just geniuses. But hey, I don't know. At RDH Sports here, I got the Dodgers and Tanner picked the Yankees. So right now,
not looking great.
Who's the smarter one?
Not looking great.
not looking too good.
You have watched baseball longer than me. You know, it tracks. I'll say that.
To be fair, I've watched shitty baseball too, a lot longer than you have, because
he
I
knows it when he sees it.
yeah, in college, man, I had the MLB whatever thing you could do, and there was 2 years in college where I watched, if not every regular season Angels game, close to every season, every game, and that was over 300 games, and I want to say we won like maybe 50, and by that I mean like really, I'm being nice. I would say 30, because 1 out of every 10 games I would say I tuned in and we won. But just don't even get me started on them. I could go for
300.
I could go for hours on that. We'll do that in the future when it's the off season, and we'll make a reel, and people will be like, God, this guy hates the Angels, but realistically, like Josh Hamilton right there. That's like, you know what I mean? That's Angels right there. All right. Baseball talk. Are we good with that? Are we good to move on?
Yeah.
UFC 308 here, folks. Yeah. Yeah. That card was absurd, by the way. Was absolutely absurd. And we're getting some engagement right now that fans like the UFC. So we'll throw them in whenever there's upcoming cards, but to recap this one real quick, I mean, Magomedov, the double fucking, how do you even double backs, just a double? How do you even do that? How do you turn around one way and then continue to turn around the opposite way? I don't think it had ever been done before, and if it did, I never saw it. Probably has. Unbelievable knockout by this kid. Yes, that's the guy that has one eye. Yes, that's the guy that I think can only fight in Abu Dhabi, if I'm not mistaken, or other countries. I'm not sure. But that's a knockout. It could potentially be the knockout of the year with what he did. I mean, it was insane. Double spinning back fist. I mean, a spinning back fist is insane, but he did it with his elbow, and he did went one rotation, then stopped and went the other way. And what's crazy, if you watch before the fight, he was doing it. He was doing that before the fight, so he had already practiced that.
He wanted it.
Obviously, he's not just going to pull it off first, but unbelievable.
You know, it's
unbelievable knockout.
It's like me, like clicking like random buttons when I'm playing UFC, and then I just like pull out just the Superman kick of a lifetime. You know.
Exactly. Like a jab uppercut combo, and the dude's asleep, and you're like, I didn't know they had a button that made they go under like that. Okay, I'll take it. Yeah, I mean, just had to shout him out for that incredible fight. Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige was a war. There was a lot of blood in that one. That was a lot of blood that everybody saw the rest of the way. Decision goes to Murphy. You know, Murphy kind of when Ige got Murphy on the ground, Murphy kind of reversed it real quickly. I'm a jiu-jitsu guy, so I kind of understand the stuff about grappling more than most folks. But when Ige took Murphy down, Ige didn't necessarily, he kind of stayed. He didn't really advance into other positions. He didn't really advance. You know, he didn't try to take his back. He didn't try to get full mount. He didn't try to get it. It kind of was just like you took him down, and they were just kind of sitting there. And Murphy really, really showed his strength on the ground. But the decision went to Murphy. Not shocking at all. Completely agree with that fight. Completely agree with that decision. Then we had Ankalaev versus Radic. And Radic looked good early, man. He looked really good early, but he tired out. And that's what happens with Ankalaev, and that's what he does. He makes you tired out. He hits hard. He wants to stand, and he just wants to knock you out. And that's all pretty much what he did. He didn't necessarily clean out, but he had a hell of a fight, and Rakic came out strong at the beginning of the fight. I thought it was going to be this one could go. This is something that I didn't see coming out of Rakic. I was like, wow, I should have put a little bit of bills on Rakic there, but Ankalaev stopped it and just kept mowing him down with just powerful, powerful shots. Then we had the big fight, Chimaev versus Whitaker. Chimaev goes nice. For those watching on YouTube, we got Venus. She's a big UFC fan. She's on the stream now. Tanner's roommate's couch. Shout out Hunter. Shout out Venus. How you doing? Odin was, that's why I got up and had to leave.
She's hanging out.
She's chilling with Tanner. Tanner, big cat
guy. She's ready for the podcast to be over.
so Smokey, like, Chad, you got 2 more fights. Let's go. I'm getting there, guys. I'm almost done. All right. Tanner's distracting me with a freak holding up a cat on the screen.
Yeah, that was intrusive. My bad.
Anyway, rolling back on now. Chimaev gets the submission in round 1, doesn't get the knockout. You've seen this time and time again from this guy in the first round. He gets a hold of you. He's had, I think, 4 or 3 fights in a row where he's gotten guys on the ground before 40 seconds or 45 seconds. And if that happens, you're in trouble because he doesn't let you move away. He just hangs on you the whole time. And the biggest thing about it during that fight I noticed with Chimaev, he got Robert Whittaker on the ground. Like I said last week, he beat your ass up, stand up. He beat your ass on the ground. And you got to talk about this because he had one of his hooks in. His hooks meaning he had one of his legs in on Robert Whittaker's kind of like groin area. You have your hooks into where his legs are, so you can't kind of push the guy off of him, right? Now, with Chimaev, you've seen this incredible strength with his chokes. Incredible strength with his chokes. He had Robert Whittaker on the chin. Okay? To take somebody's back and to choke them, you're focusing on their neck. You're putting their neck right here, and then you're putting your arm behind it right here, so you don't have those arteries going. You cut off those arteries, and then you're done, right? Chimaev had him by his freaking face, his chin. You're not supposed to tap out when that happened, but guess what happened? His jaw got dislocated. He dislocated his jaw. You saw Whittaker as soon as he got him, Whittaker was tapping like this. For those who haven't rolled before, when that's going on, that means something's very wrong. When you have a tap that's like this, that means it's like I'm just kind of tapping out. He couldn't get out of there fast enough, and then you saw him kind of get up on his knees, and his jaw was just sullen and down, and you're like, uh-oh, something's wrong with the jaw, and it was, right? So Chimaev does it again. I said he was going to be a UFC champion. We're going to see what's going to happen with him because this guy's got a lot going on. But for someone that takes jiu-jitsu all the time and to see a guy do that with somebody's chin kind of scared the crap out of me. You know what I mean? Kind of scared me a little bit.
It could be you,
kind of freaked me out.
It could be you.
Hey, dude. Come on, man. Come on, man. You know what I mean? I've only gotten rocked a couple times in jiu-jitsu, right? And it's like...
I've thrown quite a couple pillows back in the day, that could have competed. We used to have some pillow wars, cross mat pillow wars. Maybe not that that much force in the throws, but I think definitely the intention was there.
if I wasn't looking and you connected to the chin, I could have potentially been knocked out, especially with my head with all these concussions I got going on. Yeah, mushy brain McGee over here. Topuria and Holloway. Yeah, it happened. Robert Whittaker and Max Holloway both got defeated, and the child in me really hurt because I've watched them forever. Max got knocked down first or second in his career. He looked good throughout the first round. He was tapping him. He was staying away, using his length. But then Topuria got in close, and you just saw the power of Topuria, and it absolutely ended Holloway. You never like to see that from Holloway, especially, like I said, one of my favorite fighters. But Holloway will be back in Topuria right now. It's his division, and it's his reign because this guy came into the UFC as a grappler and is now one of the best stand-up boxers in the division, and that's something that he's learned and with all these incredible coaching that he's gotten. Also, just sick move that he's just chilling with Sergio Ramos. Cool. The defensive legend for Real Madrid, played for PSG as well. Sergio walks in before the fight, gives him a rose. You're like, oh, I saw that and went, oh shit. You know what I mean? Like, oh,
it's over.
This isn't good. And then after the fight, Topuria lets Sergio Ramos hold the belt. I'm like, this guy is cool. Insane. And gives respect to Holloway, gives respect to Volkanovski, said he's got to run it back because he's a legend and he deserves it. Hats off to Topuria right now. He's one of my favorite fighters. That's all the UFC talk I had. We'll see you next week, folks.
Goodbye, everyone.